Welcome to Dream Conduit. I have here today with us Chilla, and I met her through my birth wound transformation program. And we have just been chilling out ever since, looking at her dreams. And she's done a few other things with me. And I am just so fascinated by a story that she told me recently about birth trauma. And I said, you need to get on this and share this with everybody else. Now, Chilla is very unique. She's a therapist herself. So for her to jump into this sort of semi woo woo world of spirituality, it seemed very natural for her. But I think for a lot of other people, it might be kind of like, ooh, I'm sort of interested in that, or that seems neat, but those people are weird. So we're just here to say, yes, we're weird, but also we're normal. So with that, I would just invite you, Chilla, to introduce yourself and tell us about when spirituality meets therapy.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here and share my own personal experiences. So, yes, my name is Sheila, and some of you know me as a therapist. Yet again, some of you as an energy healer, and then some of you as both. And by the time I met Janice, it was already starting to integrate the two. But initially, the woo stuff was very scary for me as well. So by the time you saw me, it was feeling more natural, but not initially. And I'm seeing more and more therapists in a field that also very interested in energy work. And there is this shift. We are talking about how the earth is going through the shift, but in reality, we are going through the shift internally. And that will reflect back because we are starting to notice what's out there in a different way once we meet that shift. So I have been working as a therapist since 2010. And initially, when I was working and learning about therapy often at the beginning, therapy itself went through transformation. And at the beginning, even therapy was a woo stuff because, okay, it based on how do you feel? And it's objective. You have to talk about your feeling. How do we measure that? It's a personal report. So therapy went through a transformation as well. So it just feels natural that as it evolves, go into the woo stuff when eventually it's no longer going to be woo but integrated into one cohesive system. And I see that in my own work as well. Okay. And my specialty is I work with trauma, relationship dynamics, family systems dynamics, and addictions. And all of them are very related, especially when we are talking about trauma. And this is the traditional way of addressing trauma. So I want to talk a little bit about the therapeutic work first, just to see the differences, just to show how the two can be integrated, right? So since 2010, I did traditional therapy. And then in 2019, I went through something that we call as spiritually transformative experience. And one of them, you guys probably heard about NDE, which is a near-death experience. That is a transformative experience when a person go through that. Or another one, which was happening to me, was a Kundalini rising experience where the transformation is so heavy that you just can't deny what was happening. And also, you can't really share it with anybody, especially as a therapist, because one of the symptoms is you're seeing vision, right? With open eyes. Now, as a therapist, I would say So you mean you're hallucinating, right? So how can I talk about this to anybody? I know exactly, me as a therapist, how I would approach that. Okay, this person is hallucinating, needs medication, needs assistance, needs extra support, yada, yada, yada. But my experience was such as I was still able to function. So I was aware how I would sound if I say that. But I just couldn't deny the part where it was such a strong shift. And then I felt I might actually not able to do therapy anymore because I wasn't resonating with certain aspect of it, such as this, where I cannot talk about it. When I know how it would look like if I say something, and I know medication that would just shut down everything that I was going through. And I started to move away from therapy. But later on, as I met more and more and more people who were energetic workers, and I learned about my energetic system, I started to see how I actually integrate the two. And that was another shift that made everything much better and easier. So that being said, let me just talk a little bit about the differences as to how we work in therapy and how we work as energetic and how it would look like when we integrate the two. Especially when we are talking about trauma, because trauma lives in the body. So when we are talking about trauma, we often think about, okay, so you experience a traumatic experience. Let's say most of them happens in childhood, but not necessarily. You can have a car accident at any time, right? You can go into war at any time, right? So the experience is started there. But what happens in childhood is, and it's not necessarily has to be, okay, I was abused as a child. It's just how the child interprets parenting skills. That can be traumatic. And how we see that, how we work with that in therapy, a lot of times, well, in several ways. One is talk therapy. We talk about it, talk about the event, and we talk about what happens if the trauma is not being released. It will replay in relationships dynamics later on. Now, what happens if the person does not remember the trauma or parts? Because one of the symptomology of a traumatic experience, one of the presentation is a memory loss. So the person's psyche, as a protective factor, is going to shut down parts or full of the experience. So in an attempt to protect the psyche, and the person not remembering, they cannot talk about it. Can I still release the trauma even though I cannot talk about it? Talk about it is important. Why? Because compassion comes with understanding. And the compassion is not about the other person who might cause the trauma, but to the self. Feeling compassion about an event that I know I did not cause. I just witnessed, experienced, and having the compassion about it. And this is where the first shift is happening. So if the person is not remembering, parts of it are full of the traumatic event, what can happen? Well, we are looking at relationship dynamic, certain patterns that gets replayed all the time, because everything that happens, let's say in childhood, that is our foundation. So the parent-child interaction dynamic is going to be replayed later on in relationship dynamic. And if we're working in a relationship dynamic and we release there, it's going to be healed. So that is one way therapy works with it. The second part is not just when we are not remembering, right? But the trauma happens so early. It's not because it's a repression. It's because we were so young. We just can't recall that. But what happens, the body remembers. The body has an internal intelligence. And trauma can store in the body, in the cells. So we replay that through the body sensations. And release can happen in many different ways, and also holding on to the trauma can happen many different ways. I'm going to say an example that actually demonstrate how well a trauma can release. There are several ways a body releases trauma. One is shaking. Other one is burping, coughing, itching. Laughter is a big release. And because the body has this intelligence. So at one point, I was doing a continued educational class based on trauma. And the presenter was a therapist whose specialty was somatic release. Somatic means body release, specifically for those times when there is no recall, memory recall is happening. So we just working with the body and without talking about or recapping the trauma, the body will release it. And as an introduction, she showed us a video as to how do the body naturally able to release the trauma by looking at how animals in the wild actually do that. And they showed a video of a polar bear being chased by a helicopter. And of course, because humans are doing researches and protecting certain animals, so we do measurements and whatnot. So they captured this polar bear and they put it under so they can do the measurements. And as the polar bear was coming out of the anesthesia, at one point, the body started to shake. And when I was watching this video, I was thinking, oh, okay, the anesthesia, where is that, right? Because you feel cold and whatnot. And then what this professor was talking about is actually it's natural and innate to release the trauma from the body through shaking. So for humans, we often actually talk about, I don't know if you guys heard about adrenaline dumps. Adrenaline is a stress hormone that gets released under intense pressure, like fear. And then you can control it, and then your body is just going to shake. That's in an attempt to release that trauma from the body. So in nature, animals do that. They don't have to talk about it. It just happens. But what happens with humans? If this is innate for us, why are we still holding on to the trauma? Well, it's because of culture. Because culture tells us it's incorrect. So I can give some examples. Let's say a parent is in the store with the child and the child wants to have something and starts to cry. So what the parent says, hey, stop crying. Look, everybody's looking at us, right? So because as a parent, I feel uncomfortable that I cannot soothe my child. So I may say this, stop crying. But stop crying is happening in the body. So when a traumatic experience, and trauma I'm using here loosely, right? It's an experience, is being paired with shame. This kind of experiences can hold the trauma in the body, and then we just forget how to release it later on. Or here is another one. I hear that all the time. Oh, boys don't cry. Raise your hand if you have heard that before, right? Boys don't cry. So man actually has way much more difficulty to get in touch with their emotions. Feeling the emotion is releasing it. And if you were trained not to, then all that trauma is gonna stay in your body. And what happens later on is not just showing up in relationship dynamics, also eventually the body is going to get sick, right? So it's important for us to help release the trauma. So the next question is how early trauma can happen, and from how early we can already store trauma in the body. And it was fantastic how she was giving a very personal example. So her daughter was giving birth through cesarean section, and the son very early on was showing symptoms of something that we call as colicky. If you guys heard about the digestion and starting to work, and it's a lot of pain there. So everybody thought that this this baby was colicky because he just couldn't settle, no matter what the parents were doing. And this therapist decided, well, I do somatic release. Let me see, maybe I can release the trauma from the body. So when baby is born, they have a certain, we call it is neonatal reflexes. One of them, which if you scratch the baby's cheek, the reflex is the baby turns the head towards the scratching and opens their mouth. It's actually a reflex. Why? Because it stimulates the nursing response. And another one, many people don't know this. We know what the process the mother goes through during childbirth, but we don't really talk about what the child is actually actively participating in its own birth. And there is a reflex of pushing the leg against the wall of the birth canal. So as the mother is pushing, that squeeze is activating that pushing reflex of baby from the legs. But what happens if the baby was born through cesarean section? This particular reflex is being disrupted. So what she decided is to stimulate this reflex. Now, these neonatal reflexes only present up to a certain point, and it will disappear because it's no longer needed. But this was just a newborn baby, so he decided to try this. So what she did, she started to push her hands against the baby's feet. And she was keep doing it just to stimulate that pushing reflex. And she was doing this for about like 20 minutes. And then at one point, the baby started to respond, and then faster and faster and more. And the reflex was activated for about, 5 to 7 minutes. And when the baby was done, then the whole body started to shake. And then she recognized, oh, wow, trauma release. So that's how it happened. I thought this was a wonderful story to demonstrate how trauma can be released from the body, even at the time when, first of all, no memory, and second, you're still nonverbal, so you can't say what is happening in your body.
That is fascinating, that the foot thing. So did you say that will work on a newborn, but it wouldn't work on, say, an adult? Say an adult has a birth wound. You can't just start pushing their feet.
Correct. Even though those reflexes are no longer present, by the time you reach adulthood, the body still stores the trauma. So it can be stored in, I don't know if you guys heard about the fascia. The fascia is a connective tissue around the muscle fibers. And there are certain movements. It's still a somatic work where you can still release it through somatic work. I don't know if you guys heard about, there is a person who has, I don't know if the company's name is Human Garage. He's doing the exact same somatic work. And so that's one way the therapy can release it, right? And then how energetic work can release it is actually the same procedure what Janice is doing through that 12th chakra birth wound healing, which I participated in, and I thought that was fantastic as well. I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit to introduce them.
Sure. And at the time, I I don't think that I knew you were a therapist. I thought you were just
Correct.
yeah, I didn't know for a long time actually. So I'm so honored that you took that. Yeah, essentially I knew through looking at my dreams that I had a massive birth wound and there were some repeating patterns like what you talked about that I couldn't say, "Oh, yeah, that's because of XYZ." Like, it just didn't there was no context, and I just didn't know what to do with that information that was coming into my dream. So I did a lot of shadow work on mom, on dad, and then I said, "This they're still in my dreams." It just kept coming up certain themes, the same themes. There was a lot about just emotional intimacy and even sexual intimacy that were coming up in my dreams, showing me that I was blocked. And so I did some work. I actually did several different types of shadow work on my birth wound. And every time I did it, the dreams showed, okay, well, that part of it is done. Like my first layer was about how I felt about sex. So, yeah, I guess I'm just going to get a little bit vulnerable here. But at the time, it wasn't enjoyable to me at all. It didn't compute how people could even talk about it as if it was an enjoyable thing. I actually thought people were lying. Like when I would hear stories about, oh, yeah, it was, such a great sex. I'm just like, that's crap. Like, that's not true. It's just that I knew that there was something that I was missing about it, but there was just this wound. I didn't know what it was. So that was the first thing that I worked on. And I always thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be 20 years of therapy for me to ever get better. So I might as well just not even try. But it was gone in what feels like the blink of an eye. I mean, this particular layer that I worked on took me maybe for 4 or 5 weeks. Then another layer that I worked on, and again, this was showing up in my dreams about feeling like I'm not important. And one of my dreams was about it wasn't me in the dream, but I knew that it was me. But it was like this ball of energy. And somehow this ball of energy was somehow wheeled out the front door in a garbage can and placed out on the curb. And attached to that ball of energy slash garbage can was a rusty wire or something. So there was an attachment and it was not in good shape. And the rusty wire sort of represented the umbilical cord. So I definitely knew that as soon as I was born, I felt like completely unimportant, like trash, and just wheel me out and throw me away. But I don't think anybody really treated me that way. But that's how I just always took interaction. So maybe if somebody didn't want to meet with me, then I would feel like, oh my gosh, I'm garbage. They're throwing me away. So that birth wound kept coming up over and over and over again. But I didn't have a name to it. I didn't know why. That was the biggest one for me and the I'm not important wound. So fast forward, I've worked on the birth wound a few more times and actually I still work on it. Like I think shadow work, and I think you'll agree, Chilla, like shadow work is forever and it's fun. Not the first couple times, but now it's fun for me. So anyway, because I had such a massive birth wound, I thought I'm not the only one out there. And there was nothing that I knew of at that time to help me. So I said, you know what? I have special gifts about me. I'm really good at channeling, healing energy, and creating dream seeds that when you listen to them, they help stir up what needs to be stirred up. They help you dream about the specific triggers, wounds, whatever it is. And then you can work with that. So I just created a program. I do specific dream seeds that go through all 12, technically 13 of the chakras. And the dreams that come from those are amazing. And I go all the way from pre birth, time in the womb, the time of birth, the connection with mom and dad, and then the physical programming that we put on our bodies, because that was really important with the physical intimacy wound. When I was born, or at some point in that process, I placed programming on my own reproductive system that said, I'm trash because I came from trash, basically. That's just the quick way of saying it. But then I just replayed that programming in my actual physical reproductive system my entire life. And so the birth wound journey goes through all of those different phases of birth. And I mean, I think it's amazing. What did you think, Chilla?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And those takes, again, merging the energetics and the therapy work, because you mentioned dreams. So in therapy, we also work a lot with dreams. Why? Because dreams are the direct communication between the subconscious and the conscious. So how we are able to work with something that is in the subconscious. We don't remember it, but it is affecting us in relationship. This is how we see it. So dreams are key component. And something that you mentioned also shows up for us is the symbolism in dreams. Also, we call it as archetypal key factors. So archetypes are elements that are true across all cultures and all languages. For example, if I say the archetype of a mother across all cultures and all languages, it's going to mean the same things. And it's gonna mean in an idealistic way. This is how a mother should be. And then looking at it, yeah, but my mother was like that. So how that fits into me, right? So it's personalized as well based on what we were experiencing. Or if I say the archetype of the child, the archetype of a parent, the archetype of the emperor, or empress or magician. And we see that in the tarot cards as well. Those are the same subconscious archetypal aspects that everybody for some reason have the same idea about. And we just have to decipher what those symbolic representations mean for us. You mentioned the wire, and that was the umbilical cord. So through channeling is actually easier to decipher those. In therapy, it takes a little bit longer time. It takes digging. It takes digging between the client and a therapist. We are questioning about it. So this is the difference between therapy and energy work. Some can be just channeled and it's right there, and other is taking a little bit more time. And then I also notice differences between therapy work and energetic work. And I give you an example. So the first part is energetic work has an ease and grace about it. So I give you an example. Let's say if you're a person who grew up in a family where communication was not there. The person might be showed affection and love in a different way, maybe acts of service or gifts, but not said ever, I love you. And self-disclosure, that's me actually. And I remember after the birth wound healing program, I went visited my mom. And for some reason, I just blurred out, I love you. And it shocked us both because we never really talked about this. We didn't talk about feelings. We were doing actions to show the person that love is there. So we were both very surprised that it just came out. So how would I address something like this in therapy where I recognize, okay, so language wasn't emphasize, we didn't talk about, or the client was not talking about feelings, but it's important because relationship based on language. So the most problems I see in relationships is communication, either the lack of it or the way we communicate. And why we communicate the way we communicate, because that family didn't know how. And it's not necessarily the parents' fault either, because they just learn what was passed down. So if you were never taught how to talk, you have to reparent yourself. So you have to learn how to express certain things. So how it looks like in therapy, I may ask the client, okay, so what would you like to work on? Well, I want to say this to my parent, but I don't know how. So we're gonna begin role playing. Okay, I am your parent. Tell me how you would say it. Tell me how it feels in your body. What can you say differently so it lands different? Keep it on the eye, because if you say you do this, the person might become automatically defensive. Because I don't mean to hurt you. It's just, this is what my observation is. But if you keep it on the eye, like I feel this way, this is what's happening to me, it disarmors the defensiveness, because, hey, I'm not being attacked. The person just expresses how they feel. So we go through that role play, or the next phase, hey, maybe you can write a letter. You don't have to send it. You don't have to give it to the person, but at least it takes it out of your body. It's on the paper. Maybe it's easier. And then later on, well, maybe you can say it now. Practice, memorize the letter, and say it. And it's not enough for you to just give the letter, because that reinforces the silence about it. It has to be a way of learning to communicate. But when you get triggered and the emotions are high, it's really, really difficult to say what you want to say. So why don't you just read it? Read the letter. It's okay, you can read it. So that gives the person such confidence. And if they are able to do that, they feel so accomplished. Their self-esteem grows. So next time they are able to do it again and again and again. And we know that repetition makes the master. So at one point, it becomes natural. Uncomfortability also comes from the fact that we never did it. We are doing something completely new, and our body doesn't feel safe in that moment. I never done this. I don't know what will be the outcome, and there is this panicky part to it. But once you practice and it becomes familiar, it's no longer coming with the huge reaction. So this is how therapy works with it. But energetic work works like how I just said. It just worked in the heater, and then I just blurted it out. And I was like so surprised and also so amazed, because it also, after the shock wears off, because I was just doing something I never done, it feels good. Hey, it's not that bad. And then She responded, so initial shock, right? And then, hey, that is not that bad. And now we tell each other, I love you without any problem because it's familiar. So those are the differences. So in therapy, I'm reflecting this is the zoom out part. So the client has a larger point of view about what is actually happening internally in terms of therapy, in terms of trauma, because that can be very traumatizing if you're fearing for your life. Your life can be in danger. And not just that, are my parents accepting me as I am? So after I did the earth wound chakra healing, that zoom out was very easy for me. And when I do the energetic healing with some of my clients, they might present with something, I have an argument or a disagreement or a tension with my boss, right? And the client presents this. And as a therapist, I'm thinking, okay, this is what's happening. This is what I'm going to do, blah, 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 blah. I have a whole treatment plan in my head as the client is talking about it, right? I see it this way. But then I go up and I'm doing the energetic work and something completely different comes through. And I'm just describing to the client what I'm seeing and what the energetic work is doing. And it's gone. So the zooming out part is becoming very easy. Seeing the presenting problem from a different perspective, from a higher point of view, it reduces the tension and then also has a different perspective and understanding. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, compassion comes with understanding. If I understand what is happening there, I'm more able to feel compassion, not just towards the other person, because the work is always starts within, right? So if I'm making the change, how the environment responding to me, just like if the input is different, then the output is gonna be different. The same way as I told my mom, I love you when I never did that before. So she responded differently, right? So she was able to say it as well. So the work is always happening internally first. And with trauma, one of the things that trips off is the difficulty to returning to the self-focus because the pain is so big. Yeah, but this person said that, and that person is seeing it this way. So the initial focus and work is always about returning to the self, coming back to the self, because we cannot force change on another person. It's not even gonna work because it implies the other person is a problem. It's not. It never is. But I'm also not the problem because my perspective based on my experiences is correct. However, the person's perspective based on the person's experiences is correct too. So who's right? So in relationship dynamics, we can never work with who's right and who's wrong. So the focus has to shift from that, because when it becomes that tug of war of who's right and who's wrong, it's no understanding there. It's no compassion there. But the person is not able to say my point of view, correct? He or she cannot because the experiences are different. That's why return to the self. Have the self-compassion to the self first. And then when you shift, you're gonna respond differently. When you respond differently, the other person has no other choice but to respond differently as well.
When, like that last thing that you said, and you mentioned something before about being conscientious about the way that you talk, like saying the I feel like instead of you do XYZ. I'm also thinking, and this type of energy work, we're changing the way that we hear things also. Because when we do this, it really seems like the other person changes because we're deep in this work and we don't really notice our incremental, beautiful shifts in energy and perspective. But it's like, oh, well, I suddenly hear differently. And that means that that person is no longer saying triggering things to me, but they may still be saying those same previously triggering things, but you just hear it differently. It's like, it's just different. Yeah, it's just an observation that I was feeling into when you were talking about that.
It really looks like the other person shifted. And the anxiety is up to the point until I respond differently. But the conscious focus on, oh, the other person, oh, we really had a good conversation. This is how I usually hear it. We just had such a nice conversation. We were not blaming each other. We were not pointing fingers. And, I'll make a note in my, okay, yes, okay, it's happening. Initially, the person, when they come to therapy, they don't really see it initially that the shift happened that much. What I usually do is, well, look at back 3 months earlier, how you used to do things, how you used to respond to things, and how is the difference now? So when we are looking at in a period of time, that's the time when we are able to see a shift. But when you're in it and you feel the feeling, you really just think that, okay, this is never going to end. But it is when you see it in time.
And your dreams, they'll show clearly.
The dreams are much faster, of course.
And it reminds me too of that book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
I often refer that to my clients.
Me too.
So
I highly
powerful.
recommend it. Yeah.
Can you work on transferring how your body releases trauma from one form of release to another? For example, if anxiety triggers itching, are there ways to retrain the body to release it in a more positive way, such as laughter?
Oh my God, excellent questions. It is actually interesting because just like triggers happening automatically, how the body responds is also automatic. So there is an automatic response as to how it works for you, right? So when I go into somebody's energetic field and I'm releasing through that, the most common for me is yawning. But I also have occasionally burping during the session and then itching. Normally, one type of release does not happen as in a vacuum. A lot of times there's more than one type, but one is more prominent or the person pays attention to that one more because itching is very uncomfortable, right? And laughter, so I have laughter as well, and laughter is more enjoyable. So if the person is able to shift the focus, knowing what the releases are, and when the release is happening, shifting the focus, that other type of releases can become more prominent and taking over. So if itching is something that you're uncomfortable with, also observe the body as to what other release is happening. It's usually never just one, right? So focus on the other one because awareness helps the shift. And you might have to repeat it a couple of times and the shift just happened. And that other one becomes more prominent. It's almost like a Pavlovian training when you pair with one stimulus, like a ring of a bell with food. The dog will salivate to the ring of the bell eventually. So two stimulus is being presented at once. The response will happen. So the body can learn a new way of releasing. Yes, it requires conscious awareness. I hope it answered.
Okay, our final question. In your experience, what happens at the soul level when emotional processing and energetic alignment occur together?
Oh my God. So that itself can be a release. So what the person mean by emotional processing? So there are two emotional processing. One, I'm just feeling the feeling and I'm okay with it. Meaning I'm allowing the feeling to come up, whatever it is. If it's anger, I'm feeling the anger. So that is a emotional processing. That in itself is a release because I'm no longer pushing it down. I'm no longer judging it, right? How we push it down because we judge it. I'm not supposed to be angry because angry people are, no, aggressive. And I don't want to be like that. So I don't allow anger to come up. So pushing it down, meaning I'm judging my anger that comes up. If I'm no longer judging it and I'm just sitting with it, I feel angry and that's okay. That in itself is a release. And then another release, or another emotional processing is by talking about it, right? I'm feeling the feeling and I'm talking about it. As a therapist, I use emotion and energy interchangeably. They are the same. They are the same. It's not, and this is how therapy and energy comes together. It's like it's not that woo-woo, right? Because if you're thinking, if we go down to the cellular level, the cells do energetic processes like chemicals upgrade, chemical downgrade. That is energy. We call it is ATC in biology. ATC processes, it's a cell cycle, it's an energetic cycle. We call it is energy. So, but how the body experiences it is emotion. The cells is chemical upgrade and downgrade. That's the energy. The body experiences it as emotion. So I'm using that interchangeably.
We already came to the hour. That went by fast. I could talk to you for another hour. Oh, but my
Easy.
back doesn't want that. Yeah, Reggie, did I hear you say
Listening to
something?
the body. There was somebody else?
I thought I heard somebody. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah, there's so much more that I have questions for. So I think we're going to have a part two. I appreciate you so much. It is always a pleasure to work with you. Thank you for letting me record some of our dream sessions and putting that out there on the intertubes. It's yeah, I really appreciate it. And I think that it helps other people see that dream work is easy. It is so helpful and it's not so mysterious. You know, some people have really crazy wild dream and then they think, oh, it's such a mystery or I'll never know what that means. But really, we can know what they mean. And you just got to come and have it done. So come to Dream Space. It's probably the cheapest form of looking at your shadow that you can get. Chilla.
Sorry to interrupt. Maybe Reggie can put into the chat as your website or whatever. So if anybody's interested in that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's gentlehealingdreams.com. And that reminds me, Chilla. So you are doing energy work separate from therapy work.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, or do you offer certain services like channeling or healing or whatever? And if so, what are they and how do people book you for that?
Okay. So yes, right now the two are separate because this is how I started. And so I do channeling. The way my gifts working in terms of energy healing is I'm connecting with the person's energetic field, our aura. I'm working with the aura. And the information, so I do channeling. The information comes to me through clairvoyance. I'm seeing images, and the images unfold and tells me a story. And usually the information I'm getting is not just images, also I'm feeling it. So I'm clairsentient. And the person's spirit guides, higher self, however you want to call it, subconscious, whatever resonates with you, is telling me what needs to be worked on. And I'm talking about that. So that's through channeling. And there is another aspect that I'm able to do is it works similarly like light language, which is fantastic because if you don't understand what that the word means, it bypasses the conscious mind. So it goes directly to the subconscious. So it works similarly. It's an energetic information I can place into the person's aura in an image form. It's the same frequency as light language, but for some people it comes as voice, the sound frequency. For me, is light frequency. So I see it as an image. And that energetic imprint in the person's aura is going to help the person with whatever they're struggling with. So giving you an example, somebody asked me to help him having more awareness. And when I went into his energetic field, his guides were still keep telling me about grounding. So I received an image that I needed to put in the ground. And his awareness was disrupted because he lost his grounding throughout the day. So the imprint was helping him keeping grounded so that awareness could improve. And I call it as quantum seeding.
Quantum-seeding.com. Okay. And
yes.
that's, wow. So that's how people
right.
can get their quantum seed.
Mhm.
Oh, that's exciting. What state are you licensed in? I think somebody asked that. For which state do you have a therapist license?
New York.
Okay. New York. New York. Yay, New York.
But the energetic work is globally.
Okay.
And then again, it's hard to separate the two, right? Because after, I don't know, since 2010, so it's like my thinking is going that way. So, yeah.
One final wrap up thing. Chilla, do you and I have a project in mind that would help therapists come more in touch with this work?
So, those of you who are therapists here, right? In order for us to have our license renewed every 3 years, you have to complete continued educational classes. The same thing I was talking about at the beginning that I was attending with the polar bear. And we are actually working to provide the continued educational classes on dream work with Janice. So it's in development, and you guys can learn about how to do dream interpretation through that, and also receive continued educational credits for it. So it's in the process. So stay tuned.
Yeah, it's on the list somewhere, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Well, again, thank you. Thank you for bringing your gift of quantum seeding. I'm going to book my session because I haven't had that yet. And I really want it.
Please welcome.
No. Okay. Thanks again. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for being here.
Thank you, Chilla.